Chapter 8: The Need for a Cover Story. When I was working in a huge office a few years ago, there was a woman, I'll call her Sarah, who was having a miserable affair with a married man, the office Romeo, although, to keep the Shakespeare theme going, I'll call him King Lear. Sarah was an extremely intelligent, attractive, independent woman. King Lear, on the other hand, was a selfish, conceited twerp with no feelings for Sarah, his wife, or the myriad of other women he was chasing round the office. If you're male, I'm sorry if I'm letting the side down with this blasphemous anti-male stuff, but you wouldn't have liked this guy either. Every time King Lear disappeared with another woman for an extended lunch, Sarah insisted that he had family problems that needed attending to. When people pointed out that he'd already betrayed his wife, she insisted this was because his wife had treated him badly. When people pointed out that this was King Lear's umpteenth affair, she said it was because he was insecure. When people pointed out that he was openly boasting that she was just one of many, she insisted it was just office gossip and that he must have been misquoted. In fact, Sarah had carefully prepared cover stories for every eventuality, so in the end, people finally stopped warning her about King Lear and his testosterone-fueled rampage. It all went wrong. But as soon as Sarah realized what type of individual King Lear really was, the truth flooded in, her fear of losing him disappeared, and her affair effectively ended by itself. Now, years after it happened, what do you think Sarah would make of the cover stories if they were put to her? Would she still insist that they were reasonable? Probably not. The point is, her cover stories weren't reasoned, factual arguments. They were generated through necessity, through fear and anxiety. They allowed her to keep hold of an illusion. But without the illusion itself, why would she need them anymore? The answer is she wouldn't. They only ever existed to allow her to maintain a false view of her situation, because the real situation would have hurt her too much if she'd accepted it. Now, ask yourself whether you find the following situation hurtful. Ask yourself whether you really want to accept the following summary of yourself as a smoker. You smoke because your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between the physical tension caused by the delayed effects of nicotine and the physical tension caused by genuine fear or anxiety. As a result, your subconscious mind keeps panicking and trying to get rid of this sensation by telling you to smoke, which simply reduces it for a few minutes while causing it all over again. But your subconscious mind doesn't know that smoking causes this sensation because it's a delayed effect. So it gradually became more and more anxious and told you to smoke more and more cigarettes, which just keeps causing this feeling of tension all over again. You've fallen for the oldest trick in the book, and you may end up dying as a result. Be honest. It's hardly ideal, is it? So let's have a think. What I'm looking for is a handful of plausible-sounding cover stories to enable you to keep your affair with cigarettes going without facing up to the depressing truth about why you really smoke. Give me a moment or two. Bingo, I've got it. How about these? Smoking makes it easier for you to concentrate. Smoking makes you more confident. Smoking helps you to keep your weight down. Smoking is a habit. Now, before I go any further, I'm fully aware that one or more of these beliefs probably do sound plausible to you. The reason they sound plausible is because until you fully understand the nicotine trick, they are plausible. When you smoked your second ever cigarette, the subconscious part of your brain was tricked into thinking that you'd just relieved genuine fear or stress. In fact, all you really did was temporarily reduce a sensation that simply felt like stress or fear while creating this sensation all over again. But you didn't know this at the time, did you? If you had known it, you'd have correctly surmised that your subconscious mind was reacting irrationally. After all, what normal, self-respecting person would allow part of their brain to malfunction without doing something? It would have been too humiliating. So you needed a reason, one that sounded plausible, one that would allow you to hold your head up high and claim, or rather admit to being a smoker without immediately bursting into tears of shame, embarrassment, and despair. I suspect you're feeling a little uncomfortable at this point, and this is only natural. This book isn't easy reading, and I make no apologies for that. But let's lighten it up a bit. Let's play a game, role play. I want you to pretend for the next few minutes that you've never smoked in your life. Assume I'm a senior salesman for the cigarette industry, and I'm trying to get you to smoke just 2 cigarettes. My sales manager has explained to me that it's absolutely crucial that I get you to smoke 2 cigarettes rather than just 1. Here's why. The first cigarette will knock you absolutely sick. It will irritate your central nervous system, your lungs, your stomach, and all your internal organs. The radioactive smoke will get in your nose and throat and make you cough, and the combination of poisons and irritants might even cause you to vomit. Your immediate reaction will be one of extreme disgust and disappointment. One major scientific report correctly describes a smoker's first cigarette as a noxious pharmacological experience. In other words, smoking a cigarette is not just unpleasant, but extremely unpleasant, at least to start with. But an hour or so after smoking a cigarette, something very strange and subtle will happen. Your subconscious mind will become aware of a vague physical sensation similar to fear, even though this will be nothing more than an artificial chemical sensation that simply feels like fear or anxiety. As a cigarette salesman, I happen to know something else. If, like hundreds of millions of people, you don't smoke a second cigarette, your subconscious mind will automatically reach exactly the correct conclusion, which is that cigarettes make you feel physically tense and uneasy about an hour after smoking them and do not give pleasure or relaxation. You won't need to persuade yourself that this is the case. Your subconscious mind will do it for you, whether you like it or not. If this happens, both your conscious and subconscious minds will be in total agreement. There will be no conflict, no confusion, and therefore no phobia. Of course, you'll feel a bit uneasy and physically tense for 3 or 4 days because you smoked a cigarette, but you'll hardly even notice it, and it will be gone before you know it. As a cigarette salesman, I'm painfully aware of this fact, and this is precisely why my sales manager has told me I need to make sure you smoke a second cigarette while you're still feeling tense from the effects of the first one, because otherwise you'll never fall for the nicotine trick. Your affair with cigarettes won't start because the false connection on which it's based won't be established, and that's no use to me. As a cigarette salesman, I'm not going to make much commission from selling just one cigarette, even at UK prices. I've only got one single chance to trap you, and it's based on a secret piece of inside information that has been deliberately hidden from hundreds of millions of smokers. You see, I happen to know that, if I can somehow get you to smoke a second cigarette, it will be just as disgusting as the first one. But before the nicotine in this cigarette causes yet more physical tension, it will briefly reduce the feeling of physical tension caused by the nicotine in the previous cigarette. By itself, this will mean absolutely nothing, because this feeling of tension isn't painful in any way, and it won't be fear or anxiety, but it will be a sensation that your subconscious mind mistakes for fear and anxiety. And because your subconscious mind mistakes it for fear and anxiety, it will believe that reducing it by smoking this second cigarette has made you feel less frightened and anxious. And that's why, if I can somehow find a way to trick you into smoking this second cigarette, I'll be getting you to step into an absolute nightmare, a burning wheel that you'll then be forced to push round and round for the rest of your life without ever moving you forwards an inch, taking away your health, peace of mind, and happiness, and making money for me and my faceless corporate bosses with each desperate spin of the wheel. Now for the really big question. As a cigarette salesman, how am I going to trick you into smoking these 2 cigarettes in the first place? Well, why don't we try something right now? Why don't I try selling you on the idea of smoking these 2 cigarettes based on some of the reasons smokers actually give for smoking? I want you to imagine how they'd sound coming from me in my guise as a cigarette salesman. So let's set it up. You're the curious non-smoker and I'm the cigarette salesman. You've not yet smoked either of the cigarettes I'm holding out to you. You're not convinced. You've heard some bad stories about cigarettes. You've heard that cigarette smoke contains a chemical called polonium-210, which gives off radiation inside your lungs and causes tumors to start growing and ripping your lungs apart. I'm extremely alarmed that you know this. My eyes narrow. My fake smile falters slightly and I blush slightly underneath my equally fake tan, but I manage to recover before you notice. Then I start my pitch. I tell you that smoking will improve your concentration. Immediately you say, I don't think so. Every smoker I've ever seen is driven to distraction by anxiety and stress. How can continual physical tension possibly do anything except destroy my concentration? I'm taken aback by your knowledge and by your perfectly sound logic, so I decide on another approach. I tell you that smoking will make you more confident. Immediately you say, I don't think so. Are you telling me that I'll be more confident when I've got yellow teeth, stinking breath, and eyes like dropped blood samples? Now I'm really shaken, but I decide to have one more go. I tell you that smoking will help you lose weight. Maybe you're not overweight, but just imagine you are for the purposes of this. Immediately you say, I don't think so. I can lose weight by cutting out 1 meal a day and doing some exercise, or at least I can while I've not had my arms and legs amputated because of smoking. Stop the clock. Stand back and ask yourself a question. Why do so many smokers claim to believe this bullshit? The answer is depressingly simple. They weren't asked to believe it before they started smoking, but afterwards when they no longer had a choice. Wes, do you honestly think you would have said that before you started inhaling poisons? Don't forget that, as a cigarette salesman, I work for one of the most dishonest and cynical industries on the face of the planet. Do you really think I'd unleash these unique selling points on you before you started smoking? Do you honestly believe I'd be stupid enough to let you argue with me from a position of strength, or do you think I'd force you to your knees first? That's why I know you're going to lose all interest in smoking cigarettes, because by explaining the position you're really in, I'm going to show you how to get up off your knees. And make no mistake, right from the moment you smoked your second cigarette, that's where you were, on your knees, tricked, deceived, frightened, outsmarted, just like I was. Think back to the very beginning of your affair with cigarettes. Were you ever given the real facts before you started smoking? Did the cigarette industry ever have the decency and honesty to send a couple of their senior people round to see you when you were 11 and say, hello, I'm Mr. Benson, and this is Mr. Hedges. We're from the Golden Polonium Cigarette Company. The thing is, we'd like you to throw away your money, your health, your self-esteem, and eventually your life on a product that will create a permanent state of a chemically induced anxiety. A product that will inconvenience and humiliate you thousands of times before you finally drop dead 20 years early. Incidentally, this product contains a lethal radioactive element called polonium-210, which will leak radiation inside your lungs. When they cremate you, your ashes will glow in the dark. Sign here, please. Are you angry? Are you embarrassed? If you are embarrassed, good. You should be embarrassed. Why should I tell you otherwise? If the cigarette industry broke into your house and wrecked all your furniture, you'd call the police. But you've let them into your mind. You've let them do infinitely more damage, and you've even paid them to do it. Don't worry, I've not turned against you. I'm just trying to make you see the sheer astronomical absurdity and futility of smoking for what it really is. It's a dream, a trick, an illusion, a lifelong attempt to escape from an invisible cage created by smoking itself. It's a phobia in which the only escape open to you has been creating more fear. But can you now sense a door quietly opening up for you somewhere deep inside your head? Can you sense an escape route, an opportunity for freedom? If you can, you don't need to rush for it just yet. Just keep reading. Some smokers initially become offended and indignant when I explain that they've fallen victim to a trick. But look at it logically. How could smoking possibly be anything other than some type of trick? Without some form of deception, how can any adult human being possibly be persuaded to switch off all their survival instincts and pay to give themselves lung cancer without even being able to explain why? I don't know what you do for a living, but I suspect that you couldn't walk into a pub and start a public debate simply by putting your business card on the bar next to your drink. I can. When any smoker, no matter how shy, finds out what I do, their lives become instantly dominated by the urge to tell me why they smoke. Their eyes widen to the size of dinner plates with what they think is enthusiasm. It's not, as they abandon their seats and make their way to the bar with their cover stories, always delivered with the same desperation that pours from the brain of every smoker on the planet. I'm still waiting for someone to tell me that they smoke because they want to rid the world of cigarettes, or that they smoke because they believe that polonium-210 will protect them from ghosts. But it's always the same things over and over again, exactly the same stuff that I used to cling to. Chapter 9, Introduction to Excuses. Before getting stuck into the first cover story, let's remind ourselves once again of why you smoke. This fact will protect you for the rest of your life, but only when you're absolutely, totally confident in it. So let's make sure you are. The nicotine in cigarette smoke causes a delayed feeling of physical tension, which your subconscious mind mistakes for fear or anxiety. Smoking, while creating this tension, briefly reduces it first. This tricks your subconscious mind into believing that smoking makes you more relaxed. But smoking can't reduce genuine anxiety. It can only reduce the synthetic anxiety caused by the previous cigarette. Just read that again. Remember that it's backed up by your own experience, dozens of scientific reports, and the experience of every smoker who's ever lived. Now, I'm going to ask you to read it one more time. Read it slowly. Think about it. Make sure you digest it. Start trying to feel it. Match it against the last cigarette you smoked and the one before that. If you're between cigarettes right now, concentrate hard on what you're feeling, and you'll see that everything I've been telling you is true. An underlying state of mild, chemically induced agitation caused by the delayed effects of nicotine. It's a vague, churning sensation, a slight tightness in your chest, your neck, and the muscles round your mouth and eyes. A sickly knot in your stomach that is now so familiar that you hardly notice it. But it's important that you allow yourself to notice it now. Understand how easily your subconscious mind could and does mistake this sensation for stress or fear. Also understand that it's nothing more than your body's natural delayed reaction to nicotine. It's not fear or anxiety at all. It just feels like it. It's absolutely nothing to be scared of, so start seeing it for what it really is. Take your eyes off the shadows and start looking at what's actually causing them. Understand something else. The sensation you're feeling now doesn't mean your body wants a cigarette. It means you had one and it didn't work. When you think about having a cigarette, your subconscious mind isn't thinking about the taste, the smell, or whether it will help you to avoid putting on weight. It's imagining this feeling of fake anxiety easing, even if only briefly, when you take the first drag. It's imagining breathing out some of that tension along with a cloud of smoke. All it really wants is that brief period in which the feeling of tightness loosens slightly from around your chest and face, the moment that the vague knot relaxes its grip on your stomach, allowing you to be yourself again, just like you were before you started smoking. But ask yourself this: if this sensation of tension is really so bad, why have you invested so much time and money in keeping it going day and night? If it keeps burning you, why do you keep pouring petrol on it? Because you didn't know you were. You were tricked by nicotine. You smoke because the delayed sensation of nicotine reminds your subconscious mind of feeling nervous. It reminds you of being threatened, in danger. But without the panic reaction, the sensation itself can't possibly hurt you. So for the first time in your life, I want you to start experimenting with the following thought. If I were to stop smoking, I'd continue to feel a sensation of physical tension for a few days, so what? As with any other phobia, it's the fear that is hurting you. The sensation itself is just the trigger. It's like someone sticking a pin in a voodoo doll. It can only hurt you if you've been tricked into believing it's going to hurt you. That's how voodoo works. It's a highly developed form of fear-based hypnosis. It's a phobia triggered by superstition. So is the belief that stopping smoking is bound to be a massive struggle. It's a popular and highly profitable myth on a global scale. But don't just believe me. Simply look at the facts with your own eyes. Take away the superstition and the mass hysteria. Chase down the shadows that fuel your phobia and ask yourself what will really happen if you stop smoking. No pain, no bleeding, no dizziness, just a continuation of the vague feeling of tightness caused by the delayed effects of nicotine. That's all. And it's not even going to exist if you don't smoke for a few days. I recently recorded an audio CD specifically for businesses who have employees who want to stop smoking. I visited one company in order to explain to their smokers how best to use it and to answer questions. During my discussion with them, one woman, a heavy smoker, made an absolutely eye-opening observation, one that I hadn't even thought of. She said, "I wish nicotine withdrawal symptoms were worse. It would be so much easier to stop smoking." I was stunned. As bizarre as it sounds, she was absolutely right. If the delayed feeling caused by nicotine involved severe pain or some other extreme form of suffering, smokers would find it an absolute piece of cake to stop smoking. Do you know why? Because they'd know when it ended. This is what makes smoking so treacherous, because it's driven by sensations so mild and painless that they can't hurt you because of how they feel, but they can hurt you because of what they feel like, what they remind your subconscious mind of. The truth is, all phobias are triggered, not by situations, but by the fear of those situations. Smoking is no different. Until last year, I had a crippling phobia of speaking to audiences. It absolutely terrified me. But when I started doing nicotine trick workshops, I had no choice but to face it. I couldn't just hide in a big cardboard box with a microphone and speak to groups of smokers without them seeing me. It would hardly have inspired confidence, particularly as I was there to explain that smoking is a phobia. When I faced my own phobia by speaking at my first workshop, I realized that I actually love speaking to groups of people, particularly about the nicotine trick. So what had I been so scared of? In fact, I hadn't been scared of speaking to audiences all along. What I'd been scared of was what speaking to an audience represented: vulnerability and possible rejection. In essence, all phobias are the same. They are fear of the unknown. The question of whether something frightens you or not is all about what you know, how certain you are. If you eat a bad pizza or drink a bad pint, you'll feel ill an hour or so later. You may feel nauseous, your stomach might hurt, but it won't cause you to panic because you know what caused it. There's no fear because there's no confusion. If you got food poisoning from eating a bad pizza, would you immediately go back and eat another 20 pizzas from the same place, one after another? No. So why do you keep reacting to withdrawal symptoms by giving yourself more withdrawal symptoms when you could simply stop smoking and be permanently free of the entire smoking nightmare in a few days? Because your subconscious mind isn't seeing this reality. It's seeing the chemically induced illusion. It's focusing on a single, irrelevant detail. Smoking briefly reduces the nicotine effect from the previous cigarette, and ignoring the important detail, smoking is the sole cause of this sensation. The reason is that your subconscious mind mistakes this sensation for fear, which represents danger or threat. It therefore doesn't see the task of reducing it as irrelevant. It sees it as urgent. Imagine that smoking a cigarette caused physical tension immediately, rather than it taking about an hour. You wouldn't want to smoke again, would you? I've got news for you. If your body is free of nicotine to start with, it does cause tension immediately, but it doesn't reach full strength for about an hour. The confusion is caused by the fact that if you're already suffering from the delayed effects of nicotine, more nicotine will slightly reduce this sensation before you start feeling it all over again. It's a simple illusion caused by the chemical properties of nicotine. It doesn't matter how much you shake your head, thinking that it must be more complicated than this. It isn't more complicated than this. It's simple. Have you ever watched a household pet do something absolutely stupid based on an obvious misunderstanding? Have you been torn between horror and amusement at the sight of a hyped-up puppy introducing its skull to a double-glazed patio door at 30 miles an hour just because that door was open a few moments earlier? If you're laughing, don't laugh too hard, because you've fallen for a trick that, in essence, is no more sophisticated than this, and it's left you with more than a sore head. It's left you with a phobia that kills millions of people every year. Have you ever stepped aside from the mass hysteria about stopping smoking and asked yourself exactly what a craving really is? This mythical word is continually bandied around without any explanation whatsoever, as though it's something that falls out of the sky and just happens to smokers for no reason whatsoever. But nothing could be further from the truth. You've never wanted a cigarette for a random reason. You've wanted it because your subconscious mind was frightened by the delayed effects of nicotine and felt that smoking a cigarette would make you calmer and less anxious. Your body doesn't want nicotine. In fact, there's no such thing as a physical craving for anything. It doesn't exist. Yes, you did read that correctly. There is no such thing as a physical craving. Your body isn't capable of wanting something any more than your video recorder is capable of wanting you to play a particular film in it. Only your subconscious mind can crave something, whether it's a cigarette, sex, a bet in the bookies, or even a meal. Surely this can't be true. What about hunger? The craving for food is physical, isn't it? Actually, no, it isn't. If the craving for food was physical, why is half the Western world overweight? If hunger were purely physical, the body would only crave food when it needed it. The fact that so many people are overweight proves that it's the mind that craves food. It can be tricked into being hungry. That's why food advertising is a multi-billion-dollar industry, because put simply, it works. Of course, the body triggers the desire for food by sending strong physical signals to the brain whenever it's low on energy, but it's your subconscious brain that actually interprets these as hunger and decides to tell you to eat. If someone has anorexia or bulimia, exactly the same physical sensations are being sent to the brain by the body, but the subconscious mind is reacting illogically to these signals. They don't mean what they should. But in the mind of someone suffering from an eating disorder, this abnormal reaction to food actually feels normal, in the same way that smoking a cigarette eventually feels normal to a smoker. The contradictory properties of nicotine have caused your subconscious brain to misunderstand the delayed sensation of nicotine and react illogically by smoking. That's the trick. That's how it really works. Now let's look at the cover-up that hides it, starting with the first cover story. Smoking helps you to concentrate.